All right. So let's start off first with just a little timeline and really the news as it's rolled out over the last several months. So just to get everyone on the same page, New Jerseyans passed a constitutional amendment to legalize cannabis via a ballot initiative in November of 2020. In February, they passed bills that legalized regulating cannabis use and possession for adults 21 years and older. They since appointed their Cannabis Regulatory Commission, the CRC as we'll call it, who are tasked with leading the program. The CRC has thus far met thrice to work towards establishing the adult use market. Most recently was last night when they heard ideas for achieving equity in New Jersey's cannabis industry. That meeting was pretty well attended, had about 300-ish participants. It was just, it's just the council taking comments. Everybody gets 3 minutes. The council asks them any questions that they might have, and they move on to the next person. So that's the format of those. The next meeting like that is May 18th, 2021. That's at 2 p.m. Eastern. And then those meetings will be held monthly after that. As most of you probably know, right now we only have those statutes to work with, and most of the meat will come in the regulations, which are set to be out around August 23rd of this year. So I'm super optimistic, but wondering if 4 meetings will be enough to get sufficient feedback from the people. At last night's meeting, the invite said there'll be future opportunities to discuss equity. So it sounds like the council is going to have more meetings popping up here and there as needed. So you can keep on top of that schedule at newjersey.gov/cannabis/meetings to see when there are other ways to, advocate for your position in the industry or the industry itself. And with that, I will pass it over to Vince to talk about what we've learned from the previous rounds.
All right, thank you, Summer. So yeah, what we have learned from the previous rounds is that it's been slow and painstaking. So it has been excruciatingly slow in Jersey, this medical rollout, as I'm sure many are aware. That's a lot of few big players to operate by themselves. Something that you might hear in the industry is regulatory capture. It's basically what happened here in Jersey with the medical round. So in 2018, the RFA opened up, and just 6 businesses were selected to open new medical dispensaries, with 2 in each geographical zone. These licenses were locked up in litigation for over a year, Then in 2019, a separate request for applications was issued. The licenses for that 2019 RFA were locked up in litigation for over a year, and were just recently given the all clear from a state judge to move forward, but there have been no announcements there. So given the clear, but yet to really see anything go forward there. So again, moving very slow. They've previously done little for social equity in Jersey, and they've licensed the big multi-state operator players. We may see that made up in the future licensing, as we're seeing like meetings with the one held last night by the commission. Property is going fast, and best spots will disappear. Spots may open up, but it's unlikely to see many new good quality properties come onto the market. So get your hands on them now if you can. Summer, if you would mind going to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about the differences between the bills. So there's 3 different bills that passed as this cannabis legislation in New Jersey. A21 is the important one. That is the Cannabis Regulatory Enforcement Assistance and Marketplace Modernization Act, shorthand CREMA. A1897 is decriminalizing marijuana and hash possession, and S3454 clarifies use and possession penalties for individuals younger than 21. This was the addendum that needed to be added because the first 2 did not clarify penalties for minors and allowed minors to possess. So we've got CREMA is the main one that's going to be containing all the information about licensing and regulation, the other 2 related to possession. And I'll
Great.
pass
All
it back
right.
over to
So
Summer.
today we're going to, thanks, Vince. All right. So today we're going to mainly focus on the licensing aspects, which are in A21. So that's the bill that's important for us today. From that bill, the information that we can glean from it as far as a timeline is that in March through August of this year, as we're seeing the rules are going to be in development, the commission may release draft regulations, possibly emergency regulations, and or probably continue holding these meetings where they discuss what should be in the regulations. They could be totally silent while they work, but we do know they have at least the monthly meetings scheduled. So your comments can be heard throughout the process. In July through September, probably is when the regulations would be released. That's 180 days after the effective date. So approximately late August. Those will contain details of the app process along with a lot of other important specifics that we're waiting for. September through March, that's when application windows would be. Somewhere in there, note that there will be municipal and state level applications or requirements, and limited, unlimited license numbers, depending on the location and class of those licenses. So be clear, you're going to be clear on that before entering the application window. December 2021 or later, that's when application approvals could begin to come out, hopefully, if there aren't any legal challenges, but I guess that's unlikely given New Jersey's history. Then facility build outs, hiring, and other startup work would commence. In January to March, the commission would tell us the date that retails begin, but in any case, they have to start within 180 days after the commission's adoption of its regs, which if the rules are out in September, then retail sales would begin in March. All righty. Also within A21, we know which licenses are going to be available. Kind of an interesting setup here. They have the classes 1 through 6 for the different license types. Class 1, cultivator, 2, processor, 3, wholesaler, 4, distributor, 5, retailer, 6, delivery. And we don't know yet exactly what the tiers will be within, say a cultivator for the amount of square footage that they're allowed to produce. So don't get confused between the classes and what later will come out, which we think will be tiers for the cultivations. A lot of people are asking, oh, and also microbusiness licenses, don't want to forget those. Also, a lot of people are asking, can you own more than one license? And yes, you can in certain situations. The rules are pretty complicated on this. We don't want to get too deep in the weeds today. And for now, we know that the limits are only for the first 24 months. So you may be able to own more licenses after the first license round, or possibly if the license round goes over 2 years, potentially before that. So we'll see. As far as the license caps, the only one we know for sure right now is that cultivation licenses will be capped at 37. Again, that's for the initial 24 months, but the state has yet to release the caps for other license types. As of now, in our personal experience, we're tending to see more interest on microbusiness or retail licenses for the independent groups, rather than cultivation, since we know cultivation is limited to 37. Those will likely go to multi-state operators, our brands with experience in other states. So, those really experienced groups are going to have a competitive application process for those 37 licenses. And then also, since we know that micro-business licenses are thus far at least uncapped, and those would likely be limited at the local level, we're seeing a lot of interest there as well. And with that, I will hand it over to Vince to tell us some more about the micro businesses.
All right, so micro businesses. There will be no limit on micro business licenses, which is good. And they may use this as a means to award full licenses, something I'll talk about later with conversion. But the key will be local level connections. So you will need to have people that are either living in the municipality, as I'll cover just in a sec, or in New Jersey. But there are important size restrictions. So a micro business can employ no more than 10 people, must have a facility of 2,500 square feet or smaller, if not a cultivator. And then if a cultivator, you can only grow in 2,500 square feet or smaller. You have to possess no more than 1,000 plants each month, unless you are a distributor. There's all these different exceptions here. For processors, you can't acquire more than 1,000 pounds of usable cannabis each month. For a wholesaler, you can't acquire more than 1,000 pounds of usable cannabis each month. And same thing for a retailer. You cannot acquire more than 1,000 pounds of usable cannabis for each month. So size restrictions on the micro business, trying to keep the enterprise small. But then there are also ownership restrictions. So a micro business owner can't own a non-micro license. You couldn't own a full-scale processor and then a micro cultivator. And for residency requirements, a micro business has to have 100% ownership interest held by current New Jersey residents who have resided in Jersey for at least the past 2 consecutive years. And then at least 51% of the owners, directors, officers, or employees of the micro business have to be residents of the municipality in which you plan to locate, or the municipality bordering the municipality in which you plan to locate. It's not super clear right now what this means, this kind of 100% ownership versus 51% of owners, directors, officers with the municipality. Could you have 51% employees and meet that threshold, but have your owners be, not from the municipality? Still up in the air and kind of confusing right now, hoping to get more guidance in both regulation and the application from the state. One interesting thing about micro businesses is they can convert to a full license, but we're not really sure what that conversion process will look like yet. The law says that a micro business that meets the criteria established by the commission for conversion may submit an application to convert. So look out for this, see what it takes for a full conversion. May be something very stringent, maybe something very easy in order to get full licenses awarded. And I'll pass it back over to Summer.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm running the slideshow here and I'm not great at it. I'm not going to lie to you. All right, next slide. All right, so the next kind of licenses to be interested in definitely are the social equity licenses. Here in New Jersey, they call them the socially and economically disadvantaged licenses. So they're going to be giving out not less than 30% of the total number of licenses for these socially and economically disadvantaged licenses. And they're splitting that 30% up into 2 different buckets. So the first bucket is going to be 15% that go to certified minority businesses, and another 15% that go to certified women's and disabled veterans businesses. So one key word there that people often gloss over is certified. So if you can get your business certified before the application period, that's one way that you can be a step ahead. If you're waiting till the application time, the office doing the certification may get bogged down. It's just great to have that settled ahead of time. Another license type that they're attributing a certain amount to is the conditional license. And so 35% of the licenses will be conditional licenses. For the conditional licenses, they're going to be giving those out in an early round of licensing. For those, you have to have an income of less than $200,000 for a single person or $400,000 jointly. For anybody with a financial interest who also has decision-making authority. So that can make it a little tricky for funding your operation. It's seeming like a way to get around this, or to comply with the rule, is to have your investors have a limited decision-making authority. Um, Again, that can be a barrier to investment or diminish the value to the investor if they're giving up some control there. But definitely, could be a good way to get into the market early. And another good thing about this conditional license is that they'll have an abbreviated application process, and then you'll have a limited period of time to fully satisfy the normal conditions for licensure. Um, so we'll see in the regulations a little more detail there as to how those conditional licenses and the process for getting one works.
All right, so what the application is likely going to look like. So the statute is very descriptive, has actually discrete sections listed for each license type, which will be included in the application, equaling about 20 different sections per license type. And based on what we've seen in New Jersey, this is going to be a complicated application. It's going to be competitive. It's going to be very detailed. Applications we've produced in the past for Jersey are some of our most detailed in the history of Canna Advisors. And I do a lot of the writing around here, so I can say that pretty unequivocally. All the likely suspects on these application sections, nothing that we saw that was too crazy. If you're familiar with cannabis applications, it should be pretty straightforward as far as the material you have to pull together, but that doesn't mean it will be easy to do. So, reach out for help. That's why we're here. This is a tough thing to do on your own, and Jersey is no exception, is in fact a great example of why not to do it on your own, because this will be tough and complicated. So how to get ahead? Don't leave points on the table. This will be competitive. So involving a significantly involved person as defined by the statute that's been a New Jersey resident for 5 years will be important. Quick note on significantly involved for the nerds out there, that's going to equal 5% ownership unless nobody owns more than 5%, in which case if you're part of a group that owns 20% and you have decision-making authority, kind of the thing Summer was mentioning earlier, then you're significantly involved. That's pretty detailed and tricky. Basically, easy shorthand is if they own more than 5%, they're significantly involved, and then exceptions otherwise. There's a special note here, excuse me. The significantly involved person who has resided in the state has to have resided there for at least 2 years as of the date of the application. So can't have 4 years, 1 year type of thing. It would need to be consecutive and then at least 2 leading up to the date of the application. You have to enter into a collective bargaining agreement or a labor peace agreement that represents workers in New Jersey and another state. So there are multiple organizations that do this, but just note it can't be just a Jersey labor organization. And then a project labor agreement for the actual specific project and the build out, different than the collective bargaining, which would just be for really all lower level labor employees at the organization. And yeah, that kind of wraps it up for me. I'll pass it over to Summer. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah. One other way to get ahead, you can get priority for partnering with a higher education organization. So if you partner with an educational institution and you help them to create a curriculum involving your cannabis operations, say cultivation, manufacturing, wholesale, distributing, retail, delivery, and that curriculum is approved by the Office of the Secretary of Higher Education, that you could get priority on your application. So, in thinking about that, as you're preparing for your application, think about that educational partnership. So, when you're recruiting your team, can you get people with connections to an educational institution? who could oversee this program on and help you to write about it in your application. Possibly a director of education is someone you might think about recruiting then in your planning process. So definitely a crucial one to think about. Vince, do you have any other ways to get ahead we forgot?
So the impact zone is going to be a big one. Prioritizing location in an impact zone. This is extremely difficult to understand. I would not try to work out the list of impact zones from the law. From what we have heard, the list was basically conjured up and the categories reverse engineered by the law to be able to get certain cities in and others out. So there are certain cities, 22 different cities that will qualify as impact zones. I'll read them out here. I'm not sure if we have a panel with them listed, Summer, but I'll read them out for those who are going to go back and review the recording. So they are Atlantic City, Bridgeton, Camden, Commercial Township, East Orange, Elizabeth, Franklin Township, Irvington, Jersey City, Maurice River Township, Millville, New Brunswick, Newark, Orange, Passaic, Paterson, Perth Amboy, Plainfield, Quinton Township, Salem City, Trenton, and Vineland. And so at least 25% of the total licenses will be awarded to locations in impact zones, and then priority will be given to applications based on areas negatively affected by cannabis, by unemployment, and these are all considered in the impact zone. So basically 25% of apps going to impact zones, and also priority given to apps within impact zones, basically saying that 25% number can go higher. And then there's a question here in the chat that kind of rolls into this. Somebody asked, where can we get info on the guidelines to follow for local towns? My local municipality is opting out because they're unsure of the town's commitment. So with this, we recommend to go advocate, to connect to your local government, to present on the benefits that cannabis can provide to the town and municipality, and to argue in the right forums. Sitting back and being passive and complaining when a municipality opts out is just not the way to do this. You have to be active and go present the case for cannabis, of which there is a strong one. So we recommend people going out, connecting with local legislators, and advocating for opting in to the at least retail dispensaries and cannabis consumption sites in their area. Note that municipalities cannot opt out of cultivations, processors, distributors, wholesalers. So important to note there.
Thanks so much, Vince. Yeah, that's totally right. Definitely want to advocate for what you want to try to get it pushed through here. All right, we're running out of time though. So any last questions that people have, please submit them in the chat. We could talk about this all day. I know this has been a whirlwind. For now, if you need more information, definitely send us the questions. You can check out our blogs on the Canna Advisors website here. And let's see what questions we've gotten here.
Yeah, there was one that came earlier from Deval Shah. He's asking, why do we think the August 23rd date is still the date to watch? The commission has already said the 180-day deadline won't be met. I suppose, did that happen in the meeting last night? Deval, are you aware of where this source is from? Deval, if you could provide a reference, that would be super helpful. But regardless, we're going to be watching around that date. And even if the 180 deadline is not met, as Summer mentioned, sometime in September is when we'll really be watching for the regulations to be released. August 23rd kind of, I suppose, starts the watch.
Yep, I would agree with that.
And then in the Q&A, we have another question from Gene and Larry. I just responded to it, but Gene and Larry, would you mind providing some more clarity? Just another question there. Any clarity on boarding town is what they ask, but I'm not quite sure what you guys are asking, Gene and Larry. So if you could provide a little more clarity, that would be awesome.
Yeah, someone else sent in a question. They said, any idea what the price of licensure for cultivation will be? Less than the $200,000 for a medical license, probably. Probably yes, but certainly depends. Seems with an eye on social equity, they'll at least have a way for economically disadvantaged applicants to apply, lower possibly than that $200,000 barrier, a real barrier to entry there.
And I believe they set that as the limit. So while they won't go over that, some full licenses may be that expensive. It's tough to say right now, but they'll definitely offer, as Summer mentioned, a cheaper license in the form of the social equity or the conditional ones to start, perhaps even with micro business as well. So Duval, it seems, said in the first meeting, the commission said they would not beat the 180-day deadline. So taking that on its face as true, then Duval, yeah, I suppose, our advice there would be, keep watching in late August and September, just because it's a good date to start. Certainly nothing before then, right? But I think you just highlighted the best answer, right? To watch these commission meetings, to stay updated on when they expect the regulations to be released. I think that's the best way to go about this for sure.
Yeah, and keep an eye on any draft regulations that might come out in the meantime, or partial bits that may be released here and there, which some states do, like we're seeing in Mississippi right now. Let's see, any other questions we had here?
So Gene and Larry provided a bit more clarity on the bordering town. So I believe it has to border the municipality. It cannot be 2 towns over.
Based on the wording.
A town within a town that borders. Now there's an interesting, now you're thinking like a lawyer. That is a good idea to push. I mean, I would say that that's right on the line. That's really tough to say, a town within a town that borders. I think you have a good argument to say yes and a good argument to say no.
Yeah, as far as the micro business licenses will come down to the local level. Certainly, we always advise though to err on the more conservative reading, right? So if it's possible that they would not accept that municipality, then come up with a new strategy to make that work for you.
We got a couple questions from Mark Higgins here. Are there any particularly advantageous types of corporations to form as opposed to others? I think this is going to come more down to New Jersey, more than anything. What makes sense tax-wise at the state level. From a quick investment perspective, usually big investors like corporations because of the tax structure there, but you're not usually getting big investors in the cannabis industry yet, or at least ones that are worried about the taxation structure of, say, an LLC. So I think you can't make a bad choice, and it's going to come down to your personal decision on sort of your vision of growth for the company and the tax structure for Jersey.
Right. If tax rates, increase from the corporate tax rates increase from 21 to 28%, that'll certainly, be a reason to go towards the LLC route if that's possible for your business. Let's see. We also had a question that came in via email. If one obtains a micro business license, how hard will it be to obtain a full cultivation license in the future? I think we did touch on that. Right now, we don't know how hard it would be, but I would say if you're running a micro business, you better make sure that thing is 100% compliant, no citations, You don't want to have any issues with the regulatory authority. So when it comes around and they release whatever their criteria are, you can have a clean bill of health. No reason for them not to give you the full licensure in the future. So also producing up to the maximum amount, that could weigh in somewhere, that you're fully using the license. So if they let you step up, that you have the ability to produce more cannabis. But yeah, that's what we know right now. So I think as long as you're a well-functioning business, it shouldn't be too difficult to step it up there.
And our understanding of how it's going to play out is that the cap was instituted on cultivators to keep the multi-state operators happy, but the micro business conversion program was implemented by the state to actually keep the program robust and to keep awarding full cultivator licenses as they see fit. So that's how we think it's going to play out. We got another Q&A question. Elijah asked, is there anything about hemp for CBD, included in any of these regulations? Yes, there is. It mostly delineates hemp under the Farm Bill from cannabis in the state. It does not set out a program for hemp licenses or anything like that.
Great, thanks, Vince. All right, I think we're already 5 minutes over here. Do we have any last minute questions we need to get to? Also, we can answer these afterwards via email.
Yeah, so this question from Mark, I guess this last one, once your first dispensary is open, can you open in other communities with the same branding? This is a good question, Mark. This will depend on kind of the regulations around multiple locations. How many can you open? What will be the process for adding a license once you're already licensed? Will it be abbreviated? Will you get a favorability in the municipality? It's really tough to say. I think that the state should want to allow this, and at least for businesses to expand. So I would expect it. Your follow-up question, how do you attract investors? Summer, do you want to take this one?
Sure. Yeah. I think first off, great way to attract investors is by having your plan together, having started early, put together the team that to show investors that you can follow through on this. You've put together your processes, how your company's going to be run, how you're going to make money. So you put together some sort of financial modeling for the investors to sink their teeth into, to understand how this is going to be a benefit to them. Starting to find a location, I think, can help attract investors as well, to show what you're doing.
And using your network, asking people in your network where they might go if they were looking for money, and then sort of chaining that up. I think a few people away, you'd be surprised at who would be interested. That kind of 6 degrees of separation rule. So definitely ping the network. It's always my advice there. There's a great question here in the Q&A. Will the point system be in my favor more if I am a minority and a woman, or will I be limited to one category? Also, you mentioned something about coming certified in a category. Can you explain? Yeah, so I think based on the language of the law that you would not be limited for being, both a woman and a minority. I think you are going to get a boost for both of those things, sort of a double priority. But being certified is going to be super important here. So I'm glad you asked that question so that we can follow up on it. This certification will come from the state of New Jersey. So there will be some sort of state level organization that says you are officially certified now as a woman-owned business, a minority business, a veteran's business, right? So receiving that certification for any business you currently run, or the business, and especially the cannabis business that you plan to start. So whatever entity you form, getting that certified as soon as possible with the state for whatever you qualify for is going to be huge, because coming in and saying, hey, I'm a minority and a woman and not certified, you're going to lose out priority to the people who are certified.
Right. And also, so if you say you're asking about a minority and a woman, since the law is giving 30% to those categories, 15% to minorities and 15% to women's and disabled veterans businesses, you would qualify for both of those categories. So you'd have double the chance, I guess, of winning a license than if you just were in one of those categories. So certainly will be helpful.
Yeah, Mark's got a couple questions here too. Can product be given away as a form of advertising? This may come up in regs, but right now the statute doesn't say anything about, or it says you can't. Sometimes regs say that you can in certain circumstances, but right now statute says no. Do all employees have to be local to the location of the retail outlet? For micro businesses, at least 51%, yes. For retail dispensaries, I don't believe so. Unless I missed something, but speak up, Mark, if you saw something different, but no, that is only for micro businesses. For normal level retailer, you could have, people from Paterson working in Jersey City. There's no issue there.
Yeah. All right. Well, it looks like we still have even more questions coming in, but we'll answer those via email and wrap this thing up. Again, this recording will be sent out afterwards. Thank you so much, Vince, for all your insights today.
Thank you, Summer.
And thank you everyone for joining and for all of your very thoughtful questions. We have future webinars coming up on the other states that legalize. So if you're interested in other states, be sure to catch those on New York, Virginia, and New Mexico in the coming weeks. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.